Hey everyone, I'm Carolyn. Welcome back to another episode of As I See It. I just might be calm enough to do this video. Anybody who follows me on Twitter knows that I have been working out my anger by blasting Twitter since I came back. I was off the grid for 36 hours and came back and the Supreme Court leak happened. I might be able to do this video. I don't know. I'm pretty angry. But I think I've worked through it. But what I want to talk about today is how Roe versus Wade actually protects children. It protects children. The right wing wants you to believe that they care so much about the sanctity of life. They care so much about babies. They care so much. I mean, some of them are willing to go to extreme measures, murder, bombings of clinics, to show you how much they care about unborn life. And I know, there's a million topics I could cover on the subject. A lot of us know what a lie that is. Sure. They tell you they care about babies, and then they vote down child care. They vote down family leave. They vote down any social programs to help feed hungry children and all of that. So we know it's bull. But I want to give a different point of view, a little bit of a different point of view today, in how Roe versus Wade actually saves children. Studies have shown over and over and over again that being born when you're not wanted is not good for you. It's not good for you, period, in any way, shape, or form. It creates resentment in the mother. Can you imagine a mother in Texas who was raped or is in an abusive relationship? And by the way, up to 22% of the women receiving health care, that service, are in abusive relationships. Being forced to carry that pregnancy by the state, the government, makes her at higher risk of being abused. She's stuck in that relationship she can't get out. How do you think that kid is going to fare? Not only in that instance where if she's in an abusive relationship, it's an abusive environment for the kid, whether the kid is physically abused or not. It's not a good environment to raise a child. And the do-gooders on the other side want to say, well, why can't she get help? Why can't she get out of it? And yet they want to pull away funding for services to help mostly poor women get out of situations like that. But a child born into an abusive environment, there was a study done in Czechoslovakia, in Hungary, long time ago. I'm going to put my sources. I researched the heck out of this video. All of my sources are in the video description if you want to read more about some of the things I'm talking about. There was a study done. They compared children's and mothers' lives. They split their test group in half. I think it was like 200 on both sides. One half was women who wanted to have the procedure and couldn't. The other half had planned pregnancies, and they both carried the children to term, and they studied the effects of the children long term. Even in the best socioeconomic circumstances, we're not even talking about poverty here, which we'll get to in a minute. We're talking about equal or good, optimal socioeconomic circumstances where there's enough money to be fed, there's enough money for school and housing and shelter and transportation. Even under the best circumstances, the kids that were born to the women who were denied access to health care fared worse than the other half who were wanted. They did worse in school. There was more delinquency. There was more depression. They ended up criminals. They ended up promiscuous. They ended up in unhappy marriages, unhappy teenagers. They ended up in mental institutions, and the list goes on. Who in their right mind thinks that it's better for a child to be born unwanted, unloved. Other studies have shown that when a woman does not want the baby, there's less maternal bonding. And in 50% of women who have this procedure done already have children. Not only does limiting or denying access to that service hurt the mother, the unborn child, it hurts her existing kids. It's another mouth to feed. They end up hungry. They end up poor. They end up unsure in their housing. There's a lot of insecurity around economic insecurity, which can be very stressful on a child. The existing children perform worse in school. They have worse childhood development. Not only does denying this access hurt women and the unborn child, it hurts the kids that are already in the home, making them hungry and uncertain and stressed, leading to more abuse, more mental illness, more addiction, more criminality. Kids in those circumstances end up addicted. They end up doing crimes. In fact, how many of you have read Freakonomics? There's a chapter in Freakonomics that studies how mysteriously, nationwide, about 15 years after 1973, 15 to 20 years after 1973, mysteriously crime was going down all across the country. It was like people couldn't explain it. Why is crime going down? In every city in the country, crime is going down. About 15 to 20 years after 1973. 15 to 20 years after the passage, the legalization, after the passage of Roe v. Wade. Well, there was no evidence to directly correlate that, and it might have just been like causality, alignment. There are studies that show children born in these circumstances where they're not wanted, where there is abuse, where there is uncertain socioeconomic, they're hungry, whatever, studies show those kids end up growing up to be criminals. Many of them commit crimes. And so Freakonomics pointed out 15 years, 20 years after the passage of Roe v. Wade, nationwide there was less crime. Jeez. So my point is, these kids grow up maybe not inherently knowing they weren't wanted, but in many cases, yeah. More likely to be abused. They grow up feeling unwanted, unloved. Throughout their lives, they struggle with relationships, with not feeling loved. They're emotionally detached. A whole realm of issues from mothers who are forced by the state. Again, I can't say that enough, and how absurdly dystopic that is. That women are forced to carry a pregnancy. It's another So I struggled with a topic for this video because there are so many things that we all agree on, and I didn't want to be repetitive. This idea about women being forced to carry children they don't want and the overreach of the state, it's absurd and it's dystopic and it's troubling beyond troubling in 2022 that this is where we are. But the carrot that the powers that be, that wanted for whatever reason to repeal Roe v. Wade, and it's not about the minority of Americans who think they're saving babies' lives. That's not what this is about, because there are a very small minority. I heard as few as 20% of Americans want Roe v. Wade repealed in its entirety. So it's not about Americans, it's about something bigger, something else is going on. And so the small percentage, this minority that thinks that they're saving lives, that they're doing what's best for babies and children, without looking at the fact that what they're doing is subjecting grown ass adults and teenagers and preteens and toddlers to unspeakable crimes, in my opinion. Abuse, neglect, not being wanted, emotional turbulence. So here's one last thing I want to leave you with, that maybe you can challenge your pro-life, anti-choice, ripping rights away from women believers. A fetus does not feel any pain until the 3rd trimester. Most procedures happen in the 1st trimester. A large majority happen in the 1st trimester. The fetus feels nothing. The brain isn't fully developed. The spinal cord isn't fully developed. The lungs aren't developed. They feel nothing. They have no emotions. They don't even feel pain. And that fetus, when the mother decides that this is what is best for not only her existing children, herself, and the future of this fetus, when she decides what's best for all involved is to not allow this fetus to mature into a person, into a baby, she is making the best choice for everyone involved. And then the do-gooders who think that, oh, life, want to butt in and say, no, you don't know what's best. Instead of saving that fetus from a lifetime of pain and suffering and feeling not wanted and not being attached and going through life feeling lost and unloved and being subjected to abuse and addiction and criminality. No. We would rather subject an entire person to pain their entire life than to allow a woman to make the best decision for her and everyone involved. They are stripping that choice away. They have no idea who the individual woman is, what her circumstance is, how often she's getting beat at home, how often her daughter is getting molested at home, and she's raped, and she's pregnant, and she has to carry that baby who's going to be raped and beaten. The do-gooders think that subjecting that baby to a life of pain is a more viable answer than not letting that embryo grow into the baby who's going to be abused. It's not about life. How many times do we have to say it? This is not a debate about life. How can anybody in their right mind think that ending a fetus at 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks is worse than subjecting a child to all the horrible things this child is probably going to be subjected to and a lifetime of pain? So no, Roe v. Wade, repealing Roe v. Wade is not about saving babies. Whatever you think it's about, you've been lied to. Saving babies would mean approving legislation to end hunger, to fund our schools, to pay our teachers better, to reform criminal justice, to maybe get rid of prisons and start helping criminals instead of imprisoning them. If you really cared about life, that's what it looks like. So that's how I see it. What do you think? Leave your thoughts below.